Okay, honestly, I was starting to get into my feels a little bit thinking about how Damian Lillard is no longer on the Portland Trail Blazers. He became a Portland Trail Blazer in 2012 when I was in high school. So basically all my adult life I've watched that dude in a Blazer uniform and now he's gone. I was starting to feel a little bit emotional about it. So I thought, what better idea than to sit down and record a video talking about trades involving a Blazers point guard. This time it's the one they just got in Jrue Holiday. I have like 13 separate trades for Jrue Holiday in this video. I'm going to discuss the different landing spots, why I think Jrue Holiday makes sense for them, because Jrue Holiday makes sense for a lot of teams. And this Damian Lillard trade hinges upon the Blazers being able to maximize Jrue Holiday's value across the league in a bidding war. Now, I will have a video kind of breaking down the trade. I want to see if a Jrue Holiday trade happens in the next day or maybe a couple of days before I drop a whole video encompassing this entire Damian Lillard trade saga and putting a bow on it. I'm excited to start talking about real basketball and kind of move on from this thing at this point. But we've had coverage all offseason long, and now it's basically not the offseason anymore. But before I get into all that, I think it's time to discuss what's next in terms of this trade. Because the Ayton part of it, I'm very happy with. I will discuss the Ayton part of it in that video that wraps up this thing. The Dame to Milwaukee part of it is still TBD, dependent upon what Jrue Holiday can get. Now, I think it's very important for Portland to get back enough for Jrue Holiday where it's not just Damian Lillard for 2 first-round picks, 2 swaps, and a role player. Because I think that's kind of a failure. Now, people say the Blazers got back DeAndre Ayton. That trade was basically separate. The only piece going to Phoenix that was from Milwaukee was Grayson Allen. And I feel like Portland, if they traded Dame elsewhere, could have gotten a similar piece for Phoenix if they were holding out on that. I don't think that the Milwaukee deal and the Ayton-Phoenix deal really affected each other all that much. So I'm basically analyzing these trades separately. I think the Ayton part was a win. I think the Dame part is still to be determined. And I'm setting this criteria. If the Blazers get back at least 2 first-round picks in terms of value, maybe it's 1 first-round pick and a good young player that you could make the case you could trade a first for, then the Dame part of the trade is I'm not happy about it, but I'm not completely pissed because my expectations were a little bit lower than other people's. I've been saying all along, the market wasn't great, and Miami's package I didn't think was as bad as people were saying. Now, Miami's package, who knows what they're offering in the end? We'll probably never know. But 2 first-round picks for Jrue Holiday means the Blazers get 3 first-round picks for Damian Lillard and a couple swaps. So, okay, whatever. They don't get back a young player, though. If the Blazers are able to get back 3 first-round picks, I'm happy with it. I'm okay with it. Because in the end, 3 first-round picks for Jrue, 1 from the Bucks, along with Jrue, would add up to 4 first-round picks for Dame, and that was kind of the benchmark. Like, if you could get 4 first-round picks for Dame, that's good. So if it's 2 first-round picks and, like, a quality young player, I am fine with that return for Jrue. Now, to set the scene before I jump into some of these trade ideas, Jrue Holiday makes a ton of sense for a ton of teams. The one thing with Dame is he's a point guard. So teams with a point guard, it wasn't going to make sense for a team like the Golden State Warriors to trade for him and play him next to Steph. It wasn't going to make sense for the Memphis Grizzlies to trade for Dame and play him next to Ja. It just wasn't a good fit. Jrue Holiday is big enough, strong enough, and a good enough defender to be a starting 2 guard where he plays. I know he's kind of been a point guard for a bit, but he has played some 2 guard in his NBA career, and I think he's just fine as a 2 guard. His shot was solid last year. He's kind of been inconsistent throughout his career shooting the 3 ball, but as of late, he's been a pretty solid 3-point shooter. So I think as a starting shooting guard next to a ball-dominant point guard, Jrue Holiday is fine. And that's the thing, is a lot of teams had entrenched starting point guards and weren't going to trade for Damian Lillard for that reason. That reason does not exist for Jrue Holiday. And then also, Jrue Holiday isn't sitting here saying, only trade me to 1 team. He might. I mean, that would absolutely suck. But there should be a market for Jrue Holiday of a bunch of contending teams that would want his services. And I think there's a number of different teams that Jrue Holiday seems like he'd be cool going to. The one thing that I've been worried about regarding Jrue Holiday's value that I feel like is going a bit understated is he did have comments saying that he was probably going to retire after his contract is up. Now, he has 2 years left on his deal. Next offseason, he has a player option, so he can decline that and become a free agent next offseason. However, he's set to make $38 million. I don't think Jrue Holiday at 34 years of age is going to be declining $38 million on the free agent market. Maybe he will. If a team is worried about that, then they're probably not going to give up as much for him. And then if he does opt into that contract, then he's retiring after 2 years. You know, if his plan is to just play out the last 2 years of this contract and retire, how much value is a team going to give up for basically a 2-year rental? You know, it's a 2-year piece, a 2-year window. So if a team is looking at a championship window of 3, 4, 5 years, are they going to value Jrue Holiday like that if he's not going to be there for that entire thing, or have value a couple years from now in case it doesn't work out, or they just simply want to flip him? That is kind of the other thing in the Jrue Holiday part. However, apparently he had more recent comments that he is open to an extension, so his trade value should be fine in that regard, and a lot of teams need a guy like Jrue Holiday. An interesting part of this from Joe Cronin's point of view is he trades Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks to pair him with Giannis. Now the Eastern Conference has a Dame problem. They have a Dame problem. And if you're looking at that team, you're going to have to beat the Bucks somehow. Not only is it almost impossible to guard Giannis, it's almost impossible to guard Dame. Like, if you're a contender in the East and you're like, the Bucks just got better, they were the 1 seed last year, I know they fell out of the playoffs, but there were some injuries there and they just had too many offensive lulls that Dame just comes in and immediately fixes. If you're a team trying to win in the East, what do you need in order to deal with a Dame problem? What type of player could an Eastern Conference contender go out and get to guard Damian Lillard? Jrue Holiday. So Cronin trades Dame to the Bucks and gets back the antidote to Damian Lillard. And now Joe Cronin can sit there and start a bidding war saying, Eastern Conference teams, you need a guy to guard Damian Lillard. We got that guy. It's the only guy on the free agent market right now that you can get. And there's going to be a bunch of teams that are interested in him. So Cronin should, in my opinion, be able to get back 3 first-round picks worth of value for Jrue Holiday. Anything less, I'm kind of annoyed with. He should be able to get good value for Jrue Holiday, and if he gets 3 first-round picks, I have no complaints about the Dame part of the trade, and I'm sitting there saying, good job, Joe Cronin. Okay? I love setting the standard for Joe Cronin before he does things, because I feel like a lot of people just try and make the narrative that I'm just looking to criticize Joe Cronin, and I just hate Joe Cronin. And given some of the things I heard went down with how he handled Dame in the lead up to the finale of the saga, I feel like Cronin handled things really, really poorly. However, I'm not going to sit here and hold it against him when it comes to just analyzing roster moves. I don't like how he handled Dame, and I feel like he ran him out of town, but we're not here to argue about that. Stop typing that comment you're typing in the comment section. Okay, just stop doing it. We're not going to argue about that. We're past that. We had all summer to argue about that, and a bunch of people argued with me on it. Will we ever know the full truth as to what went down between Dame and the Blazers? Probably not. So at this point, doesn't really make sense to rehash it. Doesn't make sense for me to sit here and criticize Joe Cronin for roster moves because I'm mad at how he handled things 2 months ago when I've already been on the record with my frustrations about that. So I'm just going to analyze roster moves based on roster moves. It's literally that simple. And I like setting the precedent so that if he fails to meet that precedent I set, you can't sit there and say, you're just criticizing Joe Cronin to criticize Joe Cronin. If he doesn't meet a precedent of, 3 first-round picks worth of value for Jrue Holiday, I'm going to criticize him. If he gets close, I'm not going to criticize him much at all. Okay? But if he doesn't come close, then I'm going to criticize him for the Dame part of this trade. If he gets to 3 first-round picks worth of value, I am not going to criticize Joe Cronin. Unless, 2 of the firsts are heavily protected and won't end up being first. Because, obviously, what protections are on the picks and the quality of picks matter. Okay? So I'm setting this precedent now. We will see what the Blazers get back for Jrue Holiday. Now, let's jump into some Jrue Holiday trades. And the first one we're going to start off with is interesting, and I think it sets up a couple of other moves And that is trading him to the Sixers for James Harden, then trading James Harden to another team. Now, the two trades I have following this one are trades that could work for both Jrue Holiday or James Harden. They make almost the same amount of money, and they might have similar trade value. I think Jrue Holiday might have a little bit more, actually. So in this sort of trade, maybe the Blazers can get a first-round pick out of the Sixers with Harden for Jrue Holiday, and then they can try and flip Harden for 2 first-round picks from who knows where. Now, Fanspo made it so that I had to put in the rest of the trade. I forgot to include Toumani Camara to the Blazers in basically every trade. Just forget about that right now. The salary works on everything. There's really no question marks there for the Blazers. So this is just kind of like the first trade, and this would probably be a 3-team trade. This Blazers trade is actually official, so it'd be like Jrue Holiday to the Sixers, Harden wherever, and then that team sends assets back to the Blazers. And then if I was the Blazers, I would want to get something out of Philadelphia, because I actually think that Jrue Holiday is a really good fit in Philadelphia because they need someone to guard Dame, and Jrue Holiday is good enough offensively to replace some of Harden's production, but he's not quite a James Harden type of guy who has to be the lead guard. I feel like Tyrese Maxey could kind of take that next step in a backcourt with Jrue Holiday, where Tyrese Maxey could become the lead guard offensively in Philadelphia, but Jrue Holiday could complement him really well and step up when he needs to on offense. And then, of course, Jrue Holiday's calling card is on the defensive end, where he's one of the best guard defenders in the league. So I love the fit with Jrue Holiday and Tyrese Maxey in a backcourt with Joel Embiid, and I love that sort of resolution to their James Harden problem that they have right now, because now that is the next star to get traded, the next saga to come to some sort of finalization. Jrue Holiday has also played in Philadelphia before. He was an all-star there, actually, and then got traded to New Orleans for the draft rights to Nerlens Noel. So, the more you know. Jrue Holiday would be fun in Philadelphia, though. Now, the next trade is one that the Blazers could get assets back for Harden if they made that Philadelphia trade, or they could just flip Jrue Holiday here. And that is the Miami Heat. How fitting of an end to this saga would it be for the Blazers to end up trading a point guard to the Miami Heat, but it's not Damian Lillard, it's Jrue Holiday. So in this deal, the Blazers get back 2 unprotected Miami firsts. We don't have to have the debate as to which team's firsts are better, because the Blazers would have both of them. And I think this makes sense for the Heat for Holiday. I think it makes a little bit more sense for the Heat for James Harden, though. And with Heat fans kind of mad at Pat Riley's inability to execute a trade for the star guard that they need, and I do believe they need a star guard to get them through some of the scoring lows that they've had in the playoffs, especially in the finals. They need to be able to keep up with some of the higher octane offenses, and now Milwaukee is going to be even more of one. I think the Heat could go for Jrue Holiday to have somebody to guard Dame, or they could go for James Harden to try and have enough offensive firepower to keep up with Dame and Giannis and Chris Middleton there in Milwaukee. So if the Blazers get back 2 first-round picks and then Nikola Jovic, who I think is kind of close to a first-round value, take a flyer on him, maybe it doesn't make a bunch of sense because the Blazers now have Chris Murray, Jabari Walker, Toumani Camara as project young power forwards. Still, you're taking a chance on a young guy. Figure out a way to maybe give him a chance or have him battle against those guys in training camp and give minutes whoever wins. Probably trade Jeremy Grant at the deadline to open up some more minutes for those young fours. That's, 2.5 first-round picks worth of value, in my opinion, getting close to 3. So, and as far as all these deals go, they are a little bit below that threshold of 3 first-round picks for Jrue Holiday. However, if the Blazers are able to get multiple offers in this video, then they just have to ask for a little bit more. They just have to go to the teams offering some of the trades that I have included in this list and say, we got a bunch of similar trades. If you add a first-round pick to this deal, we will do it. And just create that sort of bidding war, get a team to come in over the top with that extra value that makes this trade ultimately, in my opinion, a win for the Portland Trailblazers. The other team that would make sense for either Jrue Holiday or James Harden is the Los Angeles Clippers, who have been tied to James Harden. Don't know why a deal hasn't been made yet, but I could also see them going after Jrue Holiday, maybe wanting Jrue Holiday a little bit more. The Clippers tried to trade for Malcolm Brogdon earlier this offseason. There were some questions with his health, so that deal got nixed, and they are still looking for an all-star caliber guard, and Jrue Holiday would come in and form a nasty defensive trio with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and I think the Clippers would be dark horses in the West once again. Maybe this year they could actually finally make some noise, though. For the Blazers, they get back 2 firsts from the Clippers. They can't trade more than that, and then they get back Terrence Mann. Maybe they value Terrence Mann. Maybe he, Thibault, Scoot, Sharp, and Simons can be kind of a 5-man rotation at the point guard, shooting guard, and small forward positions. I'm not super high on Terrence Mann, though. The rest of the salary is just filler here with Marcus Morris and Robert Covington coming back to Portland. Maybe the Blazers buy one or both of those guys out. I'm not sure. But in the end, you're getting back 2 first-round picks and a piece in Terrence Mann. I just don't think this wins for the Clippers. I think they do this. You know, you could make the case that Kawhi, PG, are they still there by the time 2028 rolls around? Could that pick be at the top of the draft? Could the Blazers have 3 years in a row where they have other teams' picks at the top of the draft? I mean, imagine Milwaukee struggles all those years. The Blazers have swap rights in 2028, so you really are just sitting on a wealth of assets if everything goes right to add to maybe a team that's hopefully contending by then around Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, maybe DeAndre Ayton if he's still there, I guess. That is intriguing, and that's kind of the time frame when I'm targeting these picks, because the more out into the future they are, the more likely that you can get them unprotected from a team that is drafting at the top. Because if you're trading Jrue Holiday to a contender right now, getting an unprotected 2024 first is pretty pointless. Like, that team is probably going to be in the playoffs if they're a contender, so they're going to be picking in the 20s, maybe the late teens. When you're getting back an unprotected pick 5-6 years down the line, I actually think it's a little bit better, because who knows if those teams are still contending by then. They might suck by then. A lot can change in a couple of years in the NBA. So 5, 6, 7 years down the line for an unprotected pick is normally ideal compared to next year or maybe the following year if you're trading with a contending team. Now, the next deal I have is the Chicago Bulls, who are basically completely directionless, and I could see just saying, screw it. We were talking about wanting Dame, but let's get Jrue Holiday instead. And the Bulls have the Portland Trailblazers 2024 first-round pick, and the Blazers can finally get all their future picks back. Who knows when the Blazers make the playoffs again and convey a pick to the Bulls, but just getting it back means that we don't even have to worry about it. And then Patrick Williams is a solid young player, maybe worth a little bit more than a first-round pick. Of course, the Bulls took him with the 4th overall pick a few years ago, and he's still relatively young, has some upside, could be that future starting power forward for the Blazers. And then Lonzo Ball's just thrown in for salary. He has no value. He's injured, out for the entire season. And maybe the Blazers could get back another Chicago first just because they're getting off his contract. I just think Patrick Williams is valuable enough that you can't really ask for much more. The Blazers basically get a first-round pick here, but then a good enough young player to justify this deal in Patrick Williams, in my opinion. Now let's jump to the next trade, which involves Jrue Holiday to the Boston Celtics, who traded Marcus Smart this past offseason, so they kind of lost that guard, playmaker, defender type of player. Filling that role with Jrue Holiday, I think Jrue Holiday is better than Marcus Smart. There's a reason Jrue Holiday was an all-star last year. Marcus Smart has never been that. And you can make the case that the Celtics really upgraded their team this past offseason by getting Kristaps Porzingis as an intriguing stretch big, and then upgrading their Marcus Smart role by going from him to Jrue Holiday. And the Celtics do have some first-round picks that they can trade. I just tossed in a 2024 Golden State first and a 2026 Boston first. There's also a piece on their team, a young piece that I would like to take a chance at, and that is Jordan Walsh, who is listed as a small forward but has a crazy wingspan, good standing reach. I think he could maybe play some 4. So I like him as kind of a big small forward, maybe small power forward, defensive type of player who looked pretty dang good in Summer League. Was one of the highest rated recruits in his draft class, went to Arkansas, kind of struggled offensively, but showed more promise in Summer League than I expected. Getting back him as a young piece makes this trade worth about 3 first-round picks. Those picks aren't quite so good as some of the other picks in this trade, with it being Golden State next year and Boston 3 years from now. I still think Boston will be good, but getting back Jordan Walsh kind of swings the deal for me, and then maybe the Blazers could flip Brogdon or Horford for something, because I don't see either of those guys really being valued on this team. I think Horford would have a little bit more of a role, though, as a backup center. I just think he'd want to play for a contender. So if the Blazers could flip Brogdon and Horford for expirings and maybe get back seconds even out of a deal, then that would be a win as well. And Boston, they get their guy that can guard Damian Lillard, because I think the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks are the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference next season. The next trade I have involves the Sacramento Kings, and this was a tough deal to come up with. I got the Kings trading 2 first-round picks for Holiday. The problem is, in order to match his salary, they have to trade role players that they really, really like, which makes me feel like the Kings aren't a team that is a destination for Jrue Holiday. I had to throw him in here because they really struggled defensively last year, but were phenomenal offensively. They drafted Davion Mitchell to hopefully be their kind of like small Jrue Holiday clone. He hasn't really panned out so far as that. He's just a little too small to be that valuable of a defender. So getting Jrue Holiday to come in and start next to De'Aaron Fox there in the backcourt, I think could be really intriguing for the Kings to upgrade their defense. And then at the 3, maybe you start like Kevin Huerter, because in this trade, Barnes and Malik Monk go to the Blazers, and I think the Blazers would try and flip both of them and get value, and I think the Blazers could maybe get another first-round pick out of this trade. And then Davion Mitchell is also included for salary, but is kind of intriguing as a young piece, backup point guard type of guy. Might not really make sense until the Blazers trade Anthony Simons, but next year I want to see Shaedon Sharpe play some 3 and start with Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson, so you would be able to give Davion Mitchell some minutes probably. So this is an intriguing trade. I just don't know if the Kings want to trade the first-round picks it would take on top of Harrison Barnes and Malik Monk. And if it's not Harrison Barnes, it has to be Kevin Huerter. Those guys just played really well for them and were a big part of them breaking that playoff curse. So not sure this trade makes much sense for the Kings. Let's jump to the next trade, as the New York Knicks, I think, could be a destination for Jrue Holiday, where Holiday would come in and start at the shooting guard position next to Jalen Brunson and provide the Knicks with another level of defense and that guy that can stop Damian Lillard as well. Now, I'm sitting here and saying like that guy that can stop Damian Lillard can still go off for 60 against anybody in the league, okay? Just respect to Dame. I'm not Dame hating now that he's not a Blazer. All right, just if there's anyone in the league that can slow Dame down, it's Jrue Holiday. So that's what I mean. Back to the trade. The Knicks have a bunch of picks. So the Blazers can maybe cherry pick a couple of picks. The 2024 Dallas first is top 10 protected, just like Dallas first was last year. Dallas, of course, tanked and kept that first round pick. It ended up being 10th. And then they got Derek Lively out of the draft, which I thought was a really good pickup. So maybe the Blazers look for a later first round pick. I just threw in kind of a later New York first and a Dallas first. Maybe New York would want their first protected a little bit. I'm not sure. But if the Blazers are taking on Evan Fournier, then I think that they should get in a couple unprotected picks maybe for Jrue Holiday to come in there and start at the 2-guard spot next to Brunson. I know a lot of people will say, oh, why don't you have RJ Barrett going to the Blazers? I don't like RJ Barrett's fit on the Blazers whatsoever. He's not a good defensive player. He's inconsistent. I think he's overpaid. He's also a shooting guard, small forward type. I just don't think he's a good fit on this Blazer team, and I just don't value him like that. I feel like that's the type of guy Blazer fans want, though, so, if you want RJ Barrett, maybe the Blazers get RJ Barrett. Like, I feel like that's the type of guy the Blazers would find a way to get for Jrue Holiday. But this trade, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3 first-round picks. I think the Knicks are one of those teams that could and maybe would give up 3 first-round picks. They have to include Hartenstein in order to make salaries work, and that's a solid backup center behind Ayton and a guy that I've kind of wanted for a while, so it would be kind of cool to have Hartenstein on the Blazers finally. Next trade involves the Orlando Magic, who could make a play for Jrue Holiday. I feel like it's a little bit early in terms of their timeline to make a play for Jrue. They do have a couple expiring contracts in Markelle Fultz and Gary Harris that they could trade the Blazers on top of whatever picks they give up. It's just, could they give up enough in terms of picks to get Jrue Holiday? I'm not sure. It would probably take another first-round pick, If this was the type of trade the Blazers made, I would be disappointed unless they could get back something for Markelle Fultz. I don't think Gary Harris has much value, so I don't know how it ultimately ends up working out. I think in 2028 the Magic will be good too, so maybe that 2024 first is the more valuable first round pick. Like, the Magic are a type of team that aren't contenders, maybe aren't even a playoff team yet, so if you get that pick in 2024, I would try and get it unprotected because it could be at the top of the draft and be somebody whose age and timeline fits up really well with Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, but I feel like the Magic would want to protect it. So the Magic, I don't think, are a very realistic team for Jrue Holiday, simply for that reason, and I think it's a little bit early for them. But the next team, I think, could be a little bit of a dark horse, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. So Spencer Dinwiddie, Royce O'Neal is expiring salary going to the Blazers in this. Noah Clowney is a draft pick from the Nets from this offseason. He's a rookie. He's a good, intriguing, like, project big man that might be able to shoot and protect the rim a little bit and has some mobility. So I think he's worth maybe a late first. And then the Blazers get back in 2029 Phoenix first, which could be really good. And it's in the same year they get an unprotected Milwaukee first. So in that year, the Blazers would have 3 unprotected firsts, and you just hope that one of the Bucks and the Suns first is at the top of the draft, because hopefully the Blazers are good by then and theirs is at the bottom of the draft. But Noah Clowney in a first-round pick here is basically the value. It's a little bit light, so that's where if you're Portland, you'd be trying to get another first-round pick out of the Nets. Maybe it has some protections on it, but you'd be trying to get 2 firsts and Clowney. I think that would be a pretty solid trade worth about 3 firsts, which is, as I said at the beginning of the video, the benchmark for me. The next trade involves Jrue Holiday going back to the New Orleans Pelicans for Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., and a couple of first-round picks. The Pelicans would also have to trade Kira Lewis Jr. in this deal for salary reasons. I forgot to include him. But a 2027 Milwaukee first, so if Milwaukee's struggling by then, you kind of add on another unprotected Milwaukee first to the batch of Milwaukee first the Blazers already have, and then a 2028 New Orleans first. I think the Pelicans can still be solid by then because they got a young core. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. Speaking of those two guys, I don't think the Pelicans are trying to trade either of them in this trade for Jrue Holiday, and Herb Jones just resigned, so I don't know when he could be traded. And I think Trey Murphy's kind of untouchable. They really, really like him. I don't think they're going to trade CJ with him. I don't think the Blazers really want CJ's salary back. Doesn't really make sense. Another guard, you'd have to flip CJ again. I think Holiday actually makes some sense next to CJ. Complements him well on both sides of the court, so I think that just trying to get as many firsts out of the Pelicans makes sense. The problem is with this deal, in order to match salary, the Pelicans have to trade both their centers. So who starts at the center spot? Maybe you start Zion at center and Brandon Ingram at the 4, Trey Murphy at the 3 with Jrue Holiday and CJ McCollum in the backcourt, but that lineup is small and probably has some flaws. So Pelicans are interesting because Jrue Holiday played there, of course, beat Dame in a playoff series when he was playing for the Pelicans, but I think that's one of the destinations where it's harder to find a workable deal. The Raptors maybe could also make a play for Jrue Holiday after missing out on Damian Lillard, but reportedly the Raptors did not want to trade OG Anunoby for Damian Lillard. They basically did not want Dame because they just weren't willing to part with anything to get Dame. But maybe to get Jrue Holiday and have a pretty dang good defensive core with OG, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes. Jrue Holiday comes in, replaces Fred VanVleet. I think he's better on both sides of the floor than Fred VanVleet. And in this trade, basically the assets that mean something are a 2029 Raptors first, which could be good, same year as that Bucks pick, and Grady Dick, who is the 13th pick from this past year's draft as a floor spacing wing. I would want the Blazers to flip Gary Trent Jr. in this situation. I just don't think he has much value. I think maybe the most the Blazers could hope for is an expiring and second round picks, but if the Blazers could get a first with him and make this 2 first round picks with Grady Dick for Jrue Holiday, that is a really, really good return, and I would have absolutely no complaints. The next deal involves the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Jrue Holiday would actually make sense as a complement to Gilgeous-Alexander there in the backcourt. There is a piece from the Thunder that is intriguing to me. That's Ousmane Dieng, played for the New Zealand Breakers and then was a rookie last year, 11th pick. The Thunder actually traded 3 first-round picks to get him, and he's just tall and skilled. and can play small forward or power forward, defensive upside, playmaking upside, looked good in Summer League, looked like he's maybe ready to make a second-year jump. So if the Blazers were able to get back him and then maybe a pick for Jrue Holiday, I would be thrilled with Ousmane Dieng if the Blazers could somehow get their hands on him. Of course, the Thunder have a million picks, so maybe it's just 3 first-round picks in salary filler. Speaking of salary filler, that's Bertans, Kenrick Williams, and David Nwaba. I think the Thunder could be a sneaky good landing spot for Jrue Holiday, because I think the Thunder are primed to make the playoffs this year, and I think Jrue Holiday would make that maybe all but guaranteed. Like, I actually really like his fit on the Thunder with bringing in Chet Holmgren, who I think will be a really good defender from day one. And then you got the star in SGA. Jalen Williams looked good as a rookie last year. Yeah, the Thunder would be a fun team with Jrue Holiday. The Timberwolves could also be a team that comes into play. The problem is they don't have future firsts they can trade. So instead, all the value here is in 2 players. That is Jalen McDaniels, who is still young, could fit a rebuilding timeline, and is a really good defender that I think can play both the 3 and the 4 spots. I don't know if the Timberwolves would want to give him up for Jrue Holiday, but Holiday would come in and be a guard version of McDaniels, I guess, on the defensive end, because both those guys are 2 of the best defenders in the league. And then I really wanted Leonard Miller in the draft. I was bummed when the Blazers took Chris Murray over him at 23, so getting back Leonard Miller here would be cool. He played for the G League Ignite last year, so played with Scoot Henderson, and I know Fanspo has him listed as a small forward, but I think he's more of a power forward center. And the Blazers right now don't have a backup center, and I think Leonard Miller could play some backup center. He can rebound the ball well enough, has decent size, and has some flashes of skill. So getting back like a Jalen McDaniels, Leonard Miller package could be interesting. I just feel like the Timberwolves don't want to part with Jaden McDaniels whatsoever. Just had to throw him in there because I thought it was intriguing. And the final trade is very intriguing because it is the Golden State Warriors trading Chris Paul, Jonathan Kuminga, and an unprotected 2027 first. Maybe that first is a little bit later. Maybe 2029 made more sense because Steph Curry is going to be retired by then, I assume, unless he's playing at like 42 years of age. So that Warriors pick could be really, really good. Jonathan Kuminga's a guy I would love to take a chance on in a Jrue Holiday trade. I think he could come in and maybe you'd start him at the 3. Maybe that's when you'd bring Sharp off the bench. But like long term, a starting lineup with Scoot, Sharp, and Jonathan Kuminga at the small forward position could be very, very intriguing. I like Kuminga's per minute numbers are more impressive than I feel like people realize. And you could say that's due to the system. The Golden State Warriors have a really good system. Kuminga is still very, very young. I believe he's only 21 years of age, was the 7th pick in the draft, has athleticism, flashing some skill. Like, in an up-tempo offense, I think he's really, really good. And I think with Sharp and Scoot, I think that's what the Blazers' goal should be, to be one of the fastest-paced teams in the league. So I really love Jonathan Kuminga as a young player to take a flyer on. Chris Paul, I would want the Blazers to buy him out or trade him elsewhere. Maybe Chris Paul gets traded like 10 times this offseason. I don't know. It is kind of funny, the thought of reuniting Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton in Portland, though. But Chris Paul is just thrown in here as salary filler. Like, not every player in these trades are for reasons in terms of, like, getting them to play them or have them. Like, they just are needed to make the deal work. So, like, in this trade, Chris Paul doesn't have the value. He just makes it work, and the value is in Kuminga and that 2027 Golden State first. And if it's truly a bidding war, maybe you can get another first out of Golden State, you know? Like, I don't know how much to hope for in terms of Jrue Holiday trade. This is just kind of to set the benchmark before we ultimately get a Jrue Holiday trade. So let me know what you think of these trades. Let me know what your favorite one for the Blazers is. Let me know where you think Jrue Holiday ends up getting traded. What is your benchmark for being happy with this trade? Just leave me your comments down in the comment section below. I'm really looking forward to read them. If you want our reaction on the Dame trade, we streamed for 4.5 hours on it. So you can go check that out. It's our latest live, and I will also have more videos on the situation. I want to do a collab with Gabe from Suns Valley Podcast and get his thoughts on what went wrong for DA in Phoenix and get some insight into that. And I know he's doing a comparison between Jusuf Nurkic and DeAndre Ayton, which should be a pretty intriguing video as well. So looking forward to the collabs with those guys this year, now that the Suns have Drew Eubanks, Jusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, and maybe Keon Johnson. I think they might cut him. I don't know. So fascinating stuff here in Blazerland. Is, in my opinion, the greatest Blazer ever is no longer a Blazer, and now goes to Milwaukee. I'll be rooting for the Bucks this year. Rooting for Giannis. I've always liked Giannis. I've always kind of liked Milwaukee anyways, so now that they have Dame, I will be a Bucks fan second. Of course, a Blazer fan first, but I am a Dame fan too. You can be both, and I want to see Dame go and win a championship. So anyway, as I said, leave your comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the road to 10,000 subs. Leave a like on this video. It helps me out. Let's get this video into the algorithm. It's nice to talk about player fits and new players in basketball again and just be past this. So I'm ready for the season. Channel content trailer on Sunday. Looking forward to that as well. With that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.